and welcome to this final day of this year's edition of the Women's Forum. It was a beautiful evening last night, and I hope you all enjoyed the concert by Barbara Hendricks and the party that followed. And thank you very much for coming out so early on this last day. I wanted to just start with a little quiz, if I may, just to kind of wake us up a little bit. And probably like you, I've been pulling out some interesting quotes from our speakers here in the Plenagora over the last few days. There are so many of them, but I just picked 4 randomly, and I'm going to ask you if you can remember who said them. And then I'm going to come out and ask you for a couple of the quotes that you remembered. So yesterday you gave me a couple of good ones, so I'd like those again today. So, who said, "I grew up dreaming of the stars. It was a refuge for me"? Do you remember who said that? Listening? Just shout it out if you know. Exactly. It was Anousheh Ansari. She spoke about that, our astronaut. Who said, "Your time is more flexible when you're the boss"? Do you remember that? I like that one. Do you remember who said that? The architect, exactly, from Nigeria, Jumoke Adenoho. Very good. Oh, you've got a great memory. What about this one? "Only a small fraction of patients ask for superpowers." Who was it? Do you remember? Stephanie Lacour, exactly. The woman who was working on neuroprosthetics, about people who come in to have prosthetics. Only a fraction of them want superpowers. And then this comment was actually not made very formally. It was actually made while somebody else was talking. Who said, "I'm a millennial and will change that"? Do you remember who said that? It was yesterday. Casualty Hendricks said that. One of the other speakers was saying something, and she said, "I'm a millennial, we'll change that." I thought, right on. In fact, that's a good quote for today. But I'll introduce today in a moment. And I wanted to ask you, what quotable quotes did you hear that you'd like to bring back to us? Can anyone think of one? I'm going to come and give you a microphone. If you can think of a soundbite, you don't have to quote it in quotations. I'm sure our speakers won't mind if you paraphrase a little bit. Any other quotes that stood out for you that you can think of, or comments that were made, or even in any of the breakouts? I'm not getting a lot of eye contact here. I think you know. Thank you.
I can't remember the lady's name, but she came from Nigeria, and she said, "A large number of people taking small steps will get us further than a few people taking large steps."
Good one. Great one. Thank you. Good example. What about a couple of more? Think of any? One more, at least.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. And there were 2 speakers, in fact, in the early morning who met the same quotes.
Great. That's a great quote. Very good quote. Excellent. Oops. Okay. Any last ones, since maybe you're warming up a little bit? You've got one? Great. Let me come over here. It's almost hard to pick out the good quotes from all the good quotes.
It's better to light a candle than curse the darkness. That was an awesome one. And she was wearing a great dress. It's fabulous. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. This helps us kind of create a shared memory of our days together. So thank you very much for those who contributed some good quotes. So I'm looking at Jennifer. I'm getting a signal. Okay, so we will be featuring at the end of the session the CEO Champions film, and we'll get to wait for that. So we're going to go now into this next session, which is called Lighting Many Fires. And I mentioned the quote by Cowley, who talked about, I'm a millennial and we're going to change that. as this session is looking at young leaders. And I wanted first to recognize, I mean, the word millennial is a little bit problematic. When I looked it up, it's kind of not entirely clear when the birthdays start that creates a millennial. But if we just said more or less those who are under 35, if you're in that kind of category of millennial, could I ask you to stand up just so that we could see who you are? Great. Okay, so, well, this session is putting the spotlight on all of you, so thank you very much for standing up this morning. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Christie Hunter Arscott. She's an expert in gender issues, diversity, and millennial integration. So, Christie, could I ask you to take the floor? Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, and good morning, everyone. It truly is an honor and a pleasure to be here today as we're in the final stretch of the Women's Conference. And also, I get the pleasure and honor of sharing the stage today with three truly phenomenal and inspiring women. The topic of our session today is lighting many fires. This topic is of critical importance as we think about what we do after this conference closes. Beyond ourselves, beyond us striving for our own individual, professional, and personal advancement and fulfillment, the question is, how do we ignite flames and light fires in others? How do we broaden our reach and catalyze change for the next generation of women leaders? As we approach the end of this conference, we are focused on how we translate insights into action, how we harness all we've learned and take that and create impacts in our communities, our organizations, and society at large. With that, I'd like to welcome my fellow panelists to the stage. No, I just need the paper because their bios are so extensive and their accolades are great, so I just need to make sure I have it all straight. First is Jane Griffiths. She's company group chairman of Europe, the Middle East, and Africa for Janssen Pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson. One interesting fact about Jane is she worked her way up the career ladder, starting as a sales representative, and now she's the first female company group chairman of Janssen for EMEA. Please welcome Jane. We had a debate while we were sitting there around who got what color chair, so Jane just picked hers. Next is Melody Hossaini. She is founder and CEO of InspirEngage and focuses on supporting young people and women to develop the skills and mindset to be successful giving back. To date, she has reached over 1 million people in 100 countries. Please welcome Melody. And last but not least is Seraina Maag, President and CEO of the EMEA region for AIG Property and Casualty. She is also on the board of directors of Credit Suisse, and she was the former chief executive of North America Property and Casualty for the Excel Group. Please welcome Seraina. Great. Hello? Okay, it's on. Now, I'd like to start off today. One thing I find very interesting is we get these bios of these incredibly impressive women, again, with accolades, positions, and a little bit of information on their career paths and accomplishments to date. But I'm always interested in understanding the person behind the bio. So I'm starting off today by asking this group to share 1 or 2 facts about themselves that is not captured in their bio or the introduction that I just gave, and also telling us a little bit about their current role in company. Jane.
So good morning, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So a little bit about me. I love talking about me, so that's great. As said, I work for Janssen, which is part of Johnson & Johnson. We're a healthcare company. I'm responsible for 100 markets in the region where we've got operations in about 35. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry all my career, and I could not wish for a more fulfilling job. I absolutely love it. And that's one of my big ethos for the rest of the people in my group, that they also are happy and love what they do, because I think that's a very important part of being successful. So, great to be in healthcare. In my private life, I'm married. I have 2 kids, both through university, both working. And in my spare time, I breed rare breeds of sheep.
That's a great random fact, Melody. You've got a hard act to follow.
Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So I've got a really weird and funny story. So a few years ago, when I was studying for my sixth form, actually, I was in year 11 at school. I was 15 years old. Every year in our area, the local MP would select one person from the schools in the area to go and work with them in the Houses of Parliament. So my school put me forward, and they hadn't won in 11 years. And then they said to me, Melody, look, don't get your hopes up, because the MP who is going to interview you is... it's not a secret, but he's a bit sexist, and he's also extremely right-wing, and I was a war refugee and an immigrant, and I still am. And you know, he's probably not going to warm to you so much, so please don't get your hopes up. But one of the factors of my success really has been that I am a little bit delusional, actually a lot delusional, so I didn't listen to that, and I went in for the interview, sat down in this amazing plush office, and the first thing he says to me is, so, where are you originally from? And I said to him, you know, I was born in Iran, I grew up in Sweden. By the age of 13, I'd lived in 4 different countries, I speak 5 different languages. It's really supported me to have such a broad view of the world. I'm able to connect with people better. By the end of the interview, he sat back and he said to me, you know what, Melody? In my 40 years in Parliament, I've never met someone quite like you. And it was like he was angry at himself for being impressed, and he chose me to go. So off I went and worked in the House of Parliament for a week. And then he said to me, Melody, look, I can't go to a meeting. Can you go in my place? Went along, and it was a meeting to discuss the contingency plan for England going to war with Iraq. And in Parliament, there are 2 doors. One is for like journalists and people to go in, you know, the everybody else to observe, and one is for official members of Parliament to partake in the discussion. I walked in the wrong door, went in and sat down in the official conversation on the contingency plan and the war in Iraq. And so when Sheryl Sandberg said that women should take their place at the table, I clearly take my place at tables I'm not invited at and speak up. And that is a true story. Crazy. Crazy. Thank you. But at InspirEngage International, at 13 years old, I became co-founder of UK Youth Parliament, one of the most successful democratic youth organizations in the world, making a real difference to young people and communities. I then did a law degree and decided I wanted to make something that I had put so much time into my career. So I set up InspirEngage International. InspirEngage International is a social enterprise, which is a business for a good cause. And our good cause is really supporting individuals, whether they're in the corporate sector, education sector, or whatever sector that they're in. We work across the board to help individuals to really tap into a positive, productive mindset coupled with the practical skills to be successful whilst giving back to their community. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. Now, my little story is, I'm in insurance. I grew up in Switzerland. I never wanted to be in insurance. As I was growing up, my dream was actually to work in a circus. It feels sometimes I'm still in a circus, actually, but I wanted to be in a circus because I did a sports called voltige, or it's acrobatics on horses, and I was Swiss champion in it. So you jump up and down on horses and you do your acrobatics and splits and all that sort of stuff. And I thought it would be a great career to work in a circus as a teacher during the day and teach the children, and then at night perform. So that was my dream as a child, and then I fell off the horse and tore my ligaments, and that was the end of my career, a sports career in that regard, because that was a long time ago where they didn't have like, you know, the quick fixes that they have today. And then I moved into insurance, and I'm very glad I did. I love, like you, Jane, I love what I'm doing, and you know, I'm responsible now for 47 countries in the EMEA region, and as I said, I'm very excited to have the job that I have. So thank you.
Wonderful, thanks. And I'm Christie Hunter Arscott, as Jillian mentioned. I was with Deloitte Consulting for the majority of my career, helping to run their North American practice for diversity and inclusion, helping companies look at how to attract and retain and promote women, millennials, and minorities, diverse talent. I now run my own practice, focusing in these areas. My random facts are, I was one of the first Rhodes Scholars to do a master's degree in women's studies, which was pretty controversial at the time. And I'm from Bermuda, so I think I could swim before I could walk, and I free dive. All right, so between a circus and sheep and Parliament, I think we're off to a good start this morning. My first question, following your introductions, is, in your opinion, how are millennials changing the face of business in today's world? And what, if any, are the implications of these changes? Jane?
So I thought I'd do a little bit of research on this question because, funnily enough, we were given the questions ahead of time. So I chatted to, in fact, a couple of millennials last night who are in our company, 2 young men, actually, who've joined us. And, of course, I have an interaction with a lot of millennials in my company, and I have 2 kids that are in that generation as well. So I, run a big company, and I need a workforce that's engaged, bright, happy, innovative, and these are all the qualities of the millennial generation. But some of the challenges I find are also the strengths of the millennial generation, which are restlessness, a desire to be entrepreneurial and innovate, and in a bigger company you can do that, but it's not the same as being a startup. And challenging the status quo, which I like, keen to progress very quickly, and I love all these qualities, but one of the challenges I have running a big organization is I need somebody back at home actually running the business. And if I've got a restless generation who are wanting to move companies or move jobs every, let's say, year, that is a challenge. So it's how do I marry those 2 things to capture all that entrepreneurial spirit and drive and enthusiasm? The other aspect of millennials which I love is the more social awareness that young people have today, and the desire to do good that I think is really coming out very strongly in this generation. So for us in our company, we have to listen to that young generation a lot more, to try to have programs in the company. We were talking about them last night, about how we could build different companies within the organization to take advantage of this free spirit, this desire to move and get different experiences all the time. And certainly around social enterprise and corporate social responsibility, we have programs in J&J now where people can go off for 6 months and work on the projects that we're sponsoring. We're also putting people through One Young World, which I don't know if any of you are in the room are aware of, but a big sort of movement for young people under 30 to really go away, spend time with the One Young World organization, and then come back and be slight irritants in the organization for change. And so I think we're moving. Are we moving quickly enough for the millennials within our company? I don't know, they'll tell me. And what I try to do is spend time as well. There's nothing more, I think, encouraging for people than to have, the ear of a senior leader to listen to what they want to do and how they want to do it. But of course, if you listen, then you have to act. And I'm fully aware of that we need to be constantly changing. So how can we make our company even more attractive for millennials, not only to come, but to stay? Because I need a workforce that knows about the business. The life cycle in pharmaceuticals is hugely long. You know, from researching a medicine to it being on the market is 10 to 15 years. So the career longevities are slightly different in our business than they might be in a FMCG company, for example. So those are just some of the random wanderings of thoughts I've had and discussions I've had, but also, you know, what we need to try to do about it in the future.
Great, that's really interesting. I just completed, and we didn't talk about this before, but I just completed a year-long study with the International Consortium for Executive Development Research, ICEDR, on millennials. And so many of the themes you just said resonated in this study as well. You talked about purpose, and one of the main things we found is they want to be inspired. You talk about being heard, that they want to be heard by you and have a voice, and we found that they really wanted to be known and understood. And then you talked about the entrepreneurial side, and in our interviews just globally, we heard people say we really want to have the ability to unleash our entrepreneurial flair within our companies. So it sounds like you're very much aligned to all of the research through your personal experience and what your company is doing.
That's just one thing, I think, is that the millennial generation want to have a voice and be heard at very senior levels in the organization. And that is different from today, where there tends to be more hierarchy. Not that I'm a particular fan of that. So it's how that voice can be heard right throughout the company is going to be very important in the future.
Yeah. So Melody, I'd love to hear from a millennial point of view what your thoughts are on this, on our restless generation, as Jane called us.
No, a brilliant answer, and I kind of, that's very much echoed in what we see. So at InspirEngage, I mean, when we work with young people and we prepare them to go into their careers and to develop the skills to be successful in those careers, what we're seeing is absolutely what Jane said, which is an interest to be able to make a difference, a social impact. So social enterprise is a business model, which we define as a business with a good cause. It's basically a business that makes money. It's different from a charity, and then obviously some of that profit or all of that profit is invested back into your cause. So there's such a growth in that at the moment. And, you know, that's really being led by young people, and it's being led by women. For young people, because they're finding it as a bridge from volunteering into a career. So something they're passionate about, that they've been doing and building up expertise and experience about, and network, is now becoming a really transition into business, where actually I can set this up as a business, make a difference, and make money. Great. The perfect model. So we're supporting a lot of young people now who need that support and training and understanding to run successful social enterprise. So that's definitely a shift that we're seeing. We're also becoming more ethical consumers. So they're asking, you know, more about your supply chain. They're asking where it comes from. They want to know where the product's going. They want to know what you're doing with the money. They want to know about the working conditions of those who work for you. So, you know, there is more of that. We are much more aware, and we're keeping people accountable in business. And I think that that's a great thing for the world that we live in. Behind that, also women. I mean, we're seeing a growth of social entrepreneurs in women. So in the corporate sector, in the kind of the normal business model, if you will, CEO level is at around 16% and growing, I think. In the social enterprise world, it's now at 49% of CEOs, female CEOs. That's fantastic. 91% of leadership teams in social enterprises have at least one woman in them. That is great. So what is happening to that? The impact of that is that it's changing the dynamics of the business world. The business world is moving away from being a very competitive world to being a more collaborative world. And that is a great thing for business, actually. It's really changing. We're in the time of transition. So for the kind of the younger generation, it means that we need to give them opportunities, we need to give them insight. And I mean, the young people that we work with, one of the great benefits of what's happening for them is that they're seeing things moving very quickly, they're seeing opportunities, they've got access, better access than ever really into these kind of opportunities. But one of the things that I think is a barrier still is confidence level, not just for young girls, but also young people generally, in looking at something, saying, actually, I can do this, I can put myself forward, and showing initiative. Opportunity doesn't necessarily have to be a call for application or something. You can create opportunities by speaking to people and saying what you do, introducing yourself, staying in touch. And these are the things, these are the skills that we need to perhaps support young people better to develop, to be able to make the most of their potential.
Great, thank you. Now, Seraina, I'd like to transition a little bit to talk about a topic we've discussed in the CEO session yesterday and then also throughout this whole conference, and that's gender parity. And I'd like to hear more about what your organization, what AIG is doing around gender parity.
Well, we had a great session yesterday afternoon at the CEO Champions. I've been talking about gender parity, and the power of gender parity is just huge. McKinsey, they've written a really good report, and for people who don't have it yet, I really recommend that you take a look at the report. You know, they put a price tag on it. There's other price tag to it, but it's a $12 trillion GDP price opportunity by 2025. So an incremental GDP growth if we have more gender parity. And so we talked a lot about that. Now, within the corporate world, there's a lot of things that you can do as an organization, and actually the report highlights 10 different areas where there can be an impact. And what's clear coming out of the report, and from my own personal experience, there's just not one silver bullet. There's a lot of things that need to happen and a lot of incremental things that can make a big difference. Actually, somebody mentioned it before in the audience around the quote of yesterday. I totally agree with that. There's a lot of incremental things that actually can make a big difference rather than a few big things, right? And I see that as well in achieving gender parity, which is, we're a long way off from that, of course, achieving gender parity. Now, I think the biggest thing an organization actually can do and where you can make a difference, and research has shown that, and I'm very conscious of that as a leader of a huge amount of a very large organization with a lot of people, is culture. You know, the tone that you set at the top and the value you put to actually gender parity. So there's a lot of different initiatives we do within the organizations. Like we have development programs for senior women. We partner with different institutions to get young girls into the organization. We partner with Greenlight for girls, so there's STEM girls to come and have them spend some time in the insurance industry. We partner with SmartWorks to help women, you know, get ready for work. So we do a lot of different things across the board, but the biggest differentiator is really the tone that you set at the top and the culture that you're creating within the organization.
Great, thank you. And Jane?
So we've had a women's leadership initiative in J&J for about 15 years now. We also, in our region, developed a development program specifically for women in the region in collaboration with the University of Cape Town, which has, you know, special skills in the area of discrimination, and it's been a really long-lasting relationship which accepts that women are different, and the way that they are coached in this particular program is very special and very deliberate. We also talk about lighting many fires. I mean, it's hard work to get gender parity in the company. So every time I sit down with my leadership team and we talk about anything, whether it's putting a project team together, whether it's deciding who's going to the next conference or whatever it might be, I'm also always looking for parity in numbers. And if we have to dig into the more junior levels of the organization to bring more women forward, then that's what we do. We also, being a big company, it must be the same for yours, also use our position to say to our suppliers, we want to deal with people who have diverse boards. So a certain percentage of our procurement will be made to boards that are diverse. It can be gender, it can be any other form of diversity. So I think it's important that you don't only focus what's inside the company and the impact that you can have on your women in the company, but that you use the size of your organization as a force for good externally as well. And we've really moved the needle on the numbers. 10 percentage points in terms of bringing director level percentage of women up to now 40%. And that was hard work. That was by lighting lots of bonfires in many places, all at the same time to do that. But one of the things I do feel is that even though we're moving the needle on the number of women in more senior positions, it's quite fragile. It's not fully ingrained in society or in business that this parity should be there. And then the final thing I think we were talking about was unconscious bias training. Yeah. And how much, I don't think I'm biased at all, but when I went through this training, I know that I'm, you know, pretty biased in many respects, and it was an eye-opener for many of us. And I think you experienced the same thing, yeah?
Yeah, no, we actually do a lot of training on unconscious bias, or we call it micro-inequities. And so we put all our senior leaders through a, you know, leading leaders program, leading one AIG. There's all sorts of different programs at the senior level. And usually, you know, one of the senior executives like myself will then go and spend time with the group and really close out the training and ask them what they've learned and what they've taken away, and we get feedback. And the one session that comes up all the time is they spend a whole day on micro-inequities. And, you know, there's a lot of men are in the group. The insurance industry is very male-dominated, but that's what they take away from everybody's really quite shocked around the unconscious biases, and it comes out in a lot of different forms. It can be the way you know, your body language works, or, you know, just the way you ask questions. And it's a wonderful training, and it really does make a difference. And the feedback from that group is always, that is the best session. And I couldn't believe, well, they usually don't believe how bad it is, their unconscious bias. So having training in your organizations probably can make the biggest difference.
Great. Well, let's just continue that thread about bias. I'm interested to hear from you whether you experienced any bias in your own career in terms of towards you, and what you did, what it taught you, how you reacted. You know, I have, right? I have, and we all do, right? All females experience that. I think I've experienced it a lot more early on in my career when I was in Switzerland. So Switzerland, a very developed economy, but you'll be surprised as to the gender parity there is very underdeveloped, I would say. And I think I experienced it a lot more there in that culture than when I moved to the United States. I think actually I wouldn't be where I am in my career today if I had stayed in Switzerland. And, you know, I even experienced it, you know, unconscious bias from the male population, but also from women. When I had my first daughter, you know, I got questions like, why do you have children if you work, and things like that. So it's and that's not even that unconscious, right? It's a conscious statement, but it's the whole culture in that country. So I experienced it a lot throughout my early career. I think you become a little more immune as you race through your career, and you just know how to deal with it, and you just brush it off, right? And focus on what you can focus on, and focus on delivering results. You learn how to deal with it. Great. Melody?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting thing. I think it goes back to that kind of cultural, you know, it's a culture of thought, and we're all products of that environment, and we have to be very conscious about it to create those changes. But I mean, in 2011, I became the first social entrepreneur to appear on The Apprentice in the UK. So 75,000 people applied, went onto the show, and I thought, right, I'm going to bring, you know, a new way of doing business to this show. And it was a very, very dog-eat-dog environment. Although they edited to make it look even more so, it is very, very edited. But I mean, you get onto a show, and it's like, you know, if a man is really, really driven, and I'm talking from looking at the way people were talking on Twitter and things, if a guy is really driven, he's really ambitious, it's like, wow, you know, he's a go-getter, a pat on the back, great. If a woman is like, go-getter, putting herself forward on shows like that, it's, oh my God, she is so like, you know, she's the B word, or she's, you know, she's so trying to get people out the way, and she's so this, and she's so that. And it's, you know, and it was that. But I think we're actually moving away. We've come such a long way from that now. And I think people are much more aware of it, and they're much more kind of congratulatory to women. But it was interesting. A few years ago, I do a lot of professional speaking, and I was invited to speak at the United Nations Chamber in UNESCO. And afterwards, there was a gentleman who came up to me, and he said, Melody, that was really great. It was so professional. And I stopped at the word professional, and I said, that's a very interesting word, professional. Why do you say that? Did you think it was going to be unprofessional? And he said, well, and I was younger then. I had really long hair to here and everything. And he said to me, well, I saw you walk up on stage. You know, you were this young girl in this UNESCO, and, you know, you had long flowing hair and red lipstick. And I thought, she can't possibly know what she's talking about. And I stayed quiet. And he took a few seconds, and then he said, you know, Melody, I realize that that problem is much more mine than yours. And I said, yes, yes, it is. And it was a really interesting moment. And, you know, and I think we've come such a long way since then. But I think these kind of, and, you know, last night, you know, at the drinks reception, a lovely, charismatic Mexican lady, if you're here, hi to you, because she was wasn't she lovely? She was brilliant. Anyway, she comes up to us, and she asked us, what do you do? And I said, what do you do? And she said, oh, I'm one of the people who decides who gets the awards for the Cartier Awards, you know? And I said, oh, you're one of the judges. She said, no, not judges, the awarder. And she said, you know, we have to be careful about using the word judge, especially to women. You know, women judge. And I mean, how many of you, if you're going to a conference with lots of men, you probably pay less attention to what you're going to wear than if you're going to a conference with lots of women. You know, do we judge each other too much? Do we feel conscious about it? Again, I think these are becoming things of the past, but it's an interesting point to be kind of conscious of the history of what we're transitioning through and being conscious to instill, if we are bosses, to instill a much more positive, kinder environment for people to progress and feel comfortable to be who they are.
Great. Jane?
Well, on the face of it, I don't feel that I have encountered too much bias in my career. But as you've been talking, I've been thinking a little bit about it. And there have been a couple of times, I suppose. One was when I took time off to have my first baby, my daughter. I was the first female manager to have a baby in the company. There were other people that were there and had decided, you know, not to have kids because it might interfere with their career. And I made a conscious decision that I was going to be a trailblazer here. I was going to have a baby, and I was going to show that it didn't interrupt my work too much. So I took 8 weeks off. Things are different now, but that was fine. My kids have grown up. They seem to be pretty normal, so... and I'll tell you a story at the end about that too. But when I got back, actually, my team had been dissembled in the space of 8 weeks. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? And, you know, I just sailed through it. I thought, if that's what it's going to be, that's what it's going to be. I'm not going to call people on it. I will, you know, rebuild my team, and that will be it. But on reflection, that was a little bit of bias against a woman who'd only taken a short amount of time off to have a kid. Now things are different, more different. Are they as good as they could be about women, you know, taking time off to have kids? Maybe, not yet. But I think it takes people to trailblaze all the time to make a better space for women in the future. And so I think that was the only time when I felt being a woman had disadvantaged me slightly. I mean, when it comes to men making comments like that, I mean, don't even give it the time it deserves, you know? And I think that's the way to sort of cope with sorts of, you know, comments like that, which might get to you, but I think it's important not to let it. Yeah. But it clearly didn't in your case. So.
No, but I think, I mean, you know, women who are starting out in their careers, it is something you've got to develop a bit of a thick skin, and you've got to be able to hold your own. And sometimes it's like, you have to make a choice to be who you are against something that's challenging you to change. Mm-hmm. Because that's the only way you can trailblaze. That's the only way you can be comfortable and be happy. Because otherwise you're sacrificing who you are, and that's not worth anything. So when we work with some of these girls, I mean, I can tell you so many stories. I'll probably get in trouble. I'm always too honest, you see. I tell too many things and then I get in trouble. But I mean, you know, and I think that's a choice, that you can be feminine, you can be yourself, you can dress in lovely clothes. And I mean, it's been so fascinating here. This conference has been a real eye-opener for me, that women are so comfortable in their sexiness, in their femininity, in their confidence, and that is okay, and you can still be a kick-ass in business. And I think that actually more young girls from schools should come here and take a quick look around, because I think that would be a brilliant eye-opening experience for many.
Yeah, completely agree. And there's actually been a number of studies that show that around like being authentic and bringing your whole self to work, and how much that affects your engagement, your level of advancement in the workplace as well. So I think that's
But
right on
I
point.
think we also have to be careful about that. I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Honestly, there are so many incredibly bright women, beautiful, smart women here, but I find that quite intimidating. And I don't mean that in an amusing sense, although it might sound funny, because when I speak to some of the younger women in my organization, they say to me, you know, Jane, I could never do what you do. And I spend a lot of time saying, look, I started as a sales representative. All you've got to do is, you know, work hard, be smart. Of course, you get a few breaks here and there. But let's not make our positions seem so lofty that there's a dissociation between admiring and aspiring and feeling intimidated. And that's something that I think we really need to be careful about with young women coming through our businesses.
I think that's a really important point. Yeah. I mean, at InspirEngage, what we try and do is connect these younger girls to senior women to be able to gain that insight and to be able to speak to them just on a one-to-one. And one of the things we say to these lovely corporate women who come is, because everybody likes that sense of self-importance, everybody likes to feel like, you know, actually, yeah, I have done quite well and I do feel good about it, you know, because maybe that's a great thing to feel from time to time, absolutely. But what we say to them is that, you know, just be, like, remember you when you were young, like, break down that barrier and just speak to them like you would, like you're sitting waiting for a bus and you're just trying to connect with them, and let that kind of show that you're just normal person who's just, you know, and that's such an empowering thought, because once people, because a lot of stats have shown that we get inspired by things that we can relate to. So if we can see a spark in Jane that I can relate to, a spark in, you know, whoever, everybody here, that we can relate to, that inspires us. So absolutely, I think when we do engage with young people that we want to show the way to, just let that barrier go and speak to them and let them see some of your vulnerability, because I think that really helps.
I think one of the things that, you know, they say the glass ceiling is, you know, the lack of role models. So actually, if you're distant and you're not genuine and you're not connecting with the people, you know, then you can't be role model for them. And I think we all, women who raise to our level, have to be role models, and we have to be very conscious of our role in society, because it's broader than just your day job, right? It is a role in society, because we want to actually send the elevator down and help other women come up, and we want to attract young STEM students or young females into business, right? And actually show them it is possible. You can have a career, you can have children, and your children are going to be normal, right? I have 3 children as well, and I think they're fairly normal. And so I think it's really important that we actually do show that we're genuine and it is possible.
No, that's great, and that's one of the reasons why we started off with the question today. Tell us something that's not in your bio, because now you'll always think about Jane as a sheep breeder and Seraina as a circus performer, but it really helps to get beyond just the surface of what you see and understand people more as individuals. Great. Now, you mentioned the kids part of the equation, and we've talked a lot about the professional side today, about how to advance in the workforce, how we can help the next generation of women leaders in that sense. But let's move a little bit in transition to talk kind of about the other side of the work-life equation, and that's life. What challenges have you personally faced in that space, and how did you overcome them?
So I think the biggest challenge that I have felt throughout all of my working career is one of guilt. Guilt that I wasn't doing anything properly. I wasn't looking after my husband properly. I wasn't there for my kids. The house was a complete tip. I was stretching myself, leaving the board meetings early, and you just think, I'm not doing anything well. And I tell a lot of people about this because men feel the same way, especially young men who are sharing a lot more in the households. Everybody feels the same way. So I've got this story about when I fly. I don't know about any of you. When you fly, you get tearful when you watch the film. Often more tearful in the air than on the ground. So I'm watching this film, crying, very pleased there's no J&J people around me to watch me cry. And I thought, I've got to write to my children. I've got to write to my children. I've been such a crap mum. So I rang this long email about how much I loved them, how much I was so sorry that I hadn't seen them take their first steps. that I devolved too much of the responsibility to their nanny. It was one of those very long emotional emails. So when I landed in the US, I pressed send, went to sleep. I got up the next morning and opened my email again. An email from my daughter. Dear Ma, don't be so ridiculous. You're the best mom in the world. You're such a great role model. I'm so proud of what you've done. I tell all my friends what you do. You're in healthcare. That's fantastic. I'm crying again, obviously. And then I opened up the email from my son. Hi, Ma. Get over it. We've had some great holidays on what you earn. Love, Al. So take heart. And my daughter's an Oxford graduate. My son is qualified in architecture. They're great kids. They're perfectly normal. And what I liked about the McKinsey report was it said that daughters of women who work are more likely to be employed, are more likely to get to senior positions, and are more likely to earn more. So we should feel proud that we're working, whatever we're doing.
My challenge was actually remarkably similar, that, you know, with your first child, you do have that guilt. And I was very lucky that I had somebody very senior in the company I worked for at the time. They sat me down and said, Seraina, I know that you're going to be struggling. You got your baby, and when you come back to work, and you know what? You have to learn how to feel bad vis-a-vis work. So it's, you know, it was a real good piece of advice. So, you know, you have to have your values straight. You know, what actually matters the most is always your family, right? And that comes first and foremost. But so you sometimes, you know, you have to be happy with 80% of the job. I think women tend to be very demanding on ourselves. And, you know, with 80%, if you've done 80% of the job, you know, it's probably really still very good. And so you have to learn how to feel comfortable with that and not actually make yourself feel bad, because we tend to do that very easily. We're never satisfied with what we do, and we raise the bar on us all the time, and so you have to actually learn to deal with that. And I think one of the most important things I've learned throughout the years is you just have to, you know, you have to, when you're at work, be what you have to be at work, be a CEO or whatever you are, and when you're at home, be a mom. And, you know, I have a very similar experience with my children. My children are, you know, they're proud of me. They all want to be in insurance, which I'm not sure I want to recommend to them. But, you know, they want to be insurance. And I actually sometimes joke with them and say, Mommy's going to just give up her job and stay home. And they go, Mommy, no, we'd hate that. You drive us crazy. And so, you know, and so I think it's also how you involve your children. I've taken them on business trips, and, you know, they know what insurance is, and then, you know, when something happens in the world, and they go, Mommy, is AIG involved? And so they're, you know, so if you actually help them and understand what you're doing, they're proud of it. A lot of children actually don't know who their parent work for, what they do at work, and I think that's wrong. You really have to involve your children, and that makes a huge difference, and I wouldn't want to have it any other way.
Yeah, I mean, I have a son who's 1 year old, and he's just so cute and so lovely and just brought new meaning to my life. And it's just, you know, and I'm just at the beginning of the journey of balancing work and the responsibility of a wife, you know, because it's, once you've got your work sorted and then you've taken care of the baby, it's the husband. It's like, and then you have to be a good wife on top of it and have dinner together and then do the dishes. So it's like, you know, he does the dishes, and he washes all the bottles and sterilizes everything, and yeah, he's a great help, and that's really helped, and he was with the baby yesterday when I was here. So, you know, I think that it's all about balance, but I think it's that thing that whatever your life looks like, whatever your lifestyle is, feel okay with it, and just, there's no point you doing something and choosing a path if you're giving yourself such a hard time, because you might as well just not do it and just be at home and do the thing that makes you happy, whatever that is. So I know we have to do what we have to do, but it's all about kind of being okay with it and making it part of the story. A few years ago, I was invited by a conference to go and speak somewhere, and somebody who was so inspiring to me and a real role model, Shirin Ebadi, she said this about making challenges, because sometimes for women, that guilt of being a good mom, balancing at work, becomes a real challenge. And she said this, okay, so if I can stand up for a minute and show you what she said. So she said, if I want to get from here to there, what do I do if I can't walk over? Jump, right? That's the first logical answer somebody would say. But if I jumped, there's only so far you would get. So what would you do if you wanted to go really far? You would fly. I can't fly. Believe it or not, there's many things I can do, but flying I can't. What do you do if you want to go really far? Get somebody to carry you. You can't carry, you can't, and there's nobody else involved. What's that? You can't ask anybody to help you, but you would take a step back. You would take a run up, right? If you want to go really far, you go back first, and then you charge forward, don't you? And she said that the challenges that we face in life are these steps back that allow us to go further than we would have done had we just started from here. But only if you allow that to become a part of your story, a part of your journey, instead of staying back and never then going forward. And I found that such an inspirational and powerful way of looking at challenges in life.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, we're going to finish with one question before we open it up to the floor. And the final question is, I'd like you all to go around and sum up in one word the future you envision for the next generation of women leaders. One word.
Oh, so hard. One word. One word.
Exciting.
Bright.
I would say change.
Fantastic. Now, I have an action request for the audience. I'd like you to think about what future you envision for the next generation of women leaders and summarize that in one word. And if you're on Twitter, I'd like you to tweet that word with the hashtag for the event and a hashtag following that, lighting many fires. And then I'd encourage you to search for that on Twitter so we can just think about beyond today, what are we envisioning for the future? And when we walk away from today's session, how are we lighting those fires? And with that, I will turn it over to the audience. Oh, I misunderstood the timing cards, apparently. We have time for one question. Yeah. Yes.
So I fit into the category of the younger generation that's here. So honestly, just being here and seeing women in these positions, I think it's very important. If you don't see women in these positions, it's hard to aspire to be in them. So my question really is for you, is taking the next step and moving past the conferences. I think it's really important to think about having the younger generation be here. I think that you talked about that. I also think another thing that's really important is mentorship. So once a younger woman, you are in the business world and you do face these different challenges, I find that having a mentor and being a mentor is something that's very important. So I'm curious to see if you are a mentor, if you have in place at your organizations mentorship programs specifically with younger women, because I think that that could be a helpful step for women to move forward. So,
yeah, I'm happy to take it. So, mentorship, very important, but I think actually if you want to progress through your career, what's even more important is sponsorship, and that's been my own personal experience. So mentorship, we have mentorship programs, most companies have that, and I think they're hugely helpful. But to progress through your career, and if you aspire to be in a corner office, sponsor is more important. Sponsor is someone who is willing to take a risk on you and put you in stretch assignments. And I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't have a sponsor. I was very fortunate to have a sponsor. And in fact, my sponsor, so you know, when I got pregnant the first time, I got offered a new job, a promotion. At the time, I wasn't willing to take it because I just didn't have the courage. I just didn't feel I could do it, the new job, and so I said no. And then I put someone in place instead of me, and I went out on maternity leave, and the person ended up being disastrous and left. And then the second time I got offered a job, I took it. So I had the courage to take the job the second time. But you know, that I wouldn't have gotten the offer to take the job in the first place if I didn't have the sponsor. When I got pregnant the second time, I actually got another job offer again, and that time I took I took the job, and again, it was because of a sponsor, somebody who saw, yes, she's talented and she can deliver. And then actually, when I was pregnant, 7 months pregnant, I got my first CEO job, and it shocked the whole organization. I think it shocked the industry, quite frankly. And but it was because I had a sponsor who came and pulled me aside and said, Seraina, you're going to have to figure out how you balance your life. But we think you can do it, and we're willing to take that risk on you. And you've always delivered. We've put you in so many stretch assignments. You've always delivered, and so it's your choice. You can have the job if you want it. And because of my early experience of not having had the courage to take it, I actually ended up taking the job when I was 7 months pregnant with my son. So sponsor is really important.
Great, thank you. Now, we got carried away with our conversation today, so we would welcome questions afterwards. If you find us, we'd be happy to answer them after the session. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christie. Thanks so much to our speakers. Certainly there was a lot that resonated with me in that conversation. I've been on those airplanes, Jane. I've had those same emotions. I had to go and wipe my eyes from that memory. Anyways, a great start to our morning. We are now going to watch the CEO's Champions film that actually Seraina mentioned in one of her comments. We're very honored that in the last day they've been able to put together a film that shows the conversations that have taken place and the results. So if I could please ask for the film.
We've got 60 CEO champions all coming together because they believe that the pipeline is so important.
I expect to hear leading experts on this and people who are very committed.
I'm excited to hear the views and opinions of the senior leaders that are going to be in the room.
We would like to have a very precise plan from this meeting.
I would like to share the gender balance practices that are happening in the UAE.
I think it was energetic, creative, and amazing ideas.
Fantastic, enlightening, and surprising.
Bringing together all the actors who can make a real impact in gender equality.
I think the CEO Champions meeting was a very engaging and exciting conversation among CEOs that are dealing with gender parity issues day in, day out.
Today we had a great discussion, continuing on from last year.
The meeting was really, really exciting. I have been amazed by the reports made by McKinsey.
I can see that there are many men very engaged, as opposed to maybe what we think sometimes, and very committed in a very profound way, and that's really reassuring.
I feel very proud to be part of this session. Having worked with the CEO Champions now for 3 years, we have really moved on.
Very interesting to hear the results of that process. So you saw a lot of very familiar faces in that video. Actually, many of them are here in the room now. So I'd encourage you to go and find them, talk to them more about what's the results and what's going on in that very interesting CEO Champions process. I'm going to draw a close to our plenary session right now, and I'm going to just announce a little bit of a change to our program. As you know, we're going to have the opportunity to meet our 2015 Nobel Prize winner from Tunisia, Ouidad Bouchamaoui. And because she's meeting right now with President Hollande, She's actually got to postpone her session with us until 12:30. So please, if you could make a note of that. And 12:30, we'll see you back here, and we'll carry on our schedule as normal. So thank you again this morning. Thank you to Christie and our speakers for a wonderful session, and have a lovely rest of your morning. Thank you.